You don't manage accidents. They're unintentional deviations from expected behaviors. What you manage is your capacity to fail. And the challenge we have is to realize that our facilities are not inherently safe. You know this, but I need to remind you of this. In fact, your facility has all the components it needs to have a catastrophic failure in it right now. You don't really have to add anything. Lots of you have high pressure, lots of you have electricity, lots of you have chemicals, all those things come together. Those are all the things you need to get on the news. What keeps your facility together are your people. And the challenge for you in this room, and it really is a challenge, is that I think the first thing you have to understand is that if you're going to think about safety, you have to look at yourself and say, how do I react to safety? Because if I see safety as a problem that the worker has, then I'm probably always going to spend time fixing the worker. But I'll give you a huge, huge, huge hint. In fact, this kind of changed my life. When an event happens, start with the system first. Look at the system in depth. And then if you need to look at the worker, you can. But I'll almost promise you that when you look at the system, your need to actually look at worker behavior almost goes away. Because the people you hire are working diligently, the hardest and best they can, to actually keep your facility productive and safe. And they're almost always successful at it. That's what we manage. Now, how to get there? Well, that part of the journey is interesting, because you kind of got to think of it like this. If I populated this stick, at the pointiest end of the stick are your workers. Behind them is the supervisors and managers that work for you. Behind them is you. And at the very blunt end of the stick is the regulator. Now, my question to you is, who's most likely to get injured on this pointy stick? The reason the workers have the highest injury potential is because they're closest to the hazard. But here's where this gets interesting. Who's got the most power over the things that hurt the workers? Sadly, or happily, it's you. Because you can be as mad as you want to at that train driver for texting. He killed 27 people plus himself, but you can never blame him for the lack of some kind of engineered safeguard in that system, because he's not in charge of buying engineered safeguards. In fact, you can't blame him for the fact that the system was so brittle that it took one text message to kill 28 people. That's where you play in this game, and you play a really important role. This is what an event looks like. There's 3 parts to an event. There's always the consequence. That's when the 2 trains collide. Then there's the context. That's everything that leads up to the event. And then there's the retrospect. That's after the event happened. Now, you guys are in a really interesting position, because by the time an event gets to Dennis, 2 things have happened. One is I've oversimplified it in my reporting to the boss. And 2 is that Dennis is smarter than the worker who had the event, because he knows how the event's going to end. What's interesting to me is that where once we managed consequence, now what I would suggest what we manage is context. Good organizations understand when events are happening. They don't wait for the event to happen. Which now takes me to the most dangerous slide of all. This one. I want to tell you guys, workers don't cause accidents. What workers do is trigger the conditions necessary for the failure to happen in such a way that the failure happens. And the way I want to prove that to you is by telling you this. 10 minutes ago, you thought Kenny the alligator wrestler's job was needlessly risky. Now I will tell you that the most stable part of Kenny's accident is the alligator. The alligator is biologically designed to bite down when something hits the inside of its mouth. The wild card is not the hazard. The wild card is the operator. Here's my challenge for you guys. If I can get you to change the way you define safety, then you change the things you're interested in. If I can get you interested in looking at a system's capacity to fail safely, then you'll ask questions about how this system can fail. And you'll move away from words like, if this fails, to words like, when this fails. Every operation that you have in your facility, you should ask this question: what will kill you? When it happens, because we don't have perfect people, we don't have perfect systems, we don't have perfect customers, we don't have perfect equipment. When it happens, what keeps you from dying? And then, is that enough? Volvo says we're going to make a fatality-free car, but they're not saying they won't make a car that won't wreck. In fact, they're saying we make cars that wreck really well. That's your challenge. You want to be a company that fails often, that fails softly, and fails effectively. Because that's how you get to be a company that is the safest company in the world.